I'm John Andrew. This is Brandon. About 2.5 years ago, a priest of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, Father John Paul, gave me a phone call. My company had just produced a short promotional film about the stand-up for religious freedom rallies that were going on. He was in it. He gave me a call and said, you know what, I want to talk to you about making a documentary. And he basically said, I've taught high school, and I was teaching a bunch of high school seniors at a Catholic high school in a not-so-great area of Indianapolis. And he said the surprising thing was most of these seniors, when they were taught about church's teaching about abortion or contraception, sterilization, they accepted it all. They said it made sense. It was like maybe the first time they had heard what the church had to say, but it made sense and they believed it. But he said when he got to the issue of homosexuality, the seniors were angry, they were pissed off at the church, they just thought, you know, this is ridiculous, this is unbelievable that a loving church would hate homosexuals. And Father Hollowell had been, after 6 years of seminary, all of that education, had no idea how to answer any of their questions. So he goes online, starts doing some research, and finds out that it was really hard to figure out what the church had to say about homosexuality. So he did the research, found out what the church had to say, taught a class, and thought, you know what, everybody needs to know what the church has to say. And originally he was just going to film himself in a classroom, put that up on YouTube and try to share it with everybody. But then he realized we're in a modern age, you know, we're in the age of technology, and people don't listen to teachers anymore, they listen to experiences. So that's why he came to me and said, we need to do a documentary about the church's teaching on homosexuality. So that was in May of 2012. In November of 2012, we started a fundraiser and we raised $87,000 over the course of about 26 days to produce this film. We started filming in, I want to say February of 2013. We did the last shoot in March of 2014. And April 25th of this year, we debuted the film in front of a sold-out theater at the AMC in Indianapolis. And subsequently it's been available on Vimeo for free viewing.
We also have DVDs here. If anyone would like to copy them, we have them available for sales.
That was a labor of love making those DVDs. So anyway, this is our effort to explain the church's teaching on homosexuality through the voices of those who experience same-sex attraction.
So one little thing before we start, there are papers on your table. If you think of anything, if you want to take notes, if you think of
Editing the film in September of 2013, so a little over a year ago. But we weren't done filming yet for the completed project, so we still had a couple more shoots to do. And before we premiered it at the AMC, I had not seen the finished film. He was like, no, I want you to see it when I'm done with it. So I'd seen portions of it, but I had not seen it together. And so the first time I actually saw the film, the completed film altogether, was half an hour before we showed it in the AMC when he handed me the DVD and said, check this, we need to make sure there aren't any glitches. And yeah, so I didn't see it too far in advance before everyone else did, but yeah.
So, turn it over to you guys. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, that answers one of my questions. We're shot on these locations. I was going to ask you, do you travel around a lot?
We put about 10,000 miles on my Camaro and traveled as far northeast as Massachusetts, as far west as Denver. And yeah, the first shoot was in Michigan in February of 2013. And after doing that and one other one in February, we realized it's way too cold. What are we thinking? So we postponed the other shoots. We did most of them through the summer of last year. And then we wrapped up doing the B-roll up in Gary, Indiana in March.
So that old church, where was that church at?
That was in Gary, Indiana. Yeah. My roommate in college and I, we traveled around different states and found places like that. We just kind of explored them, doing some urban exploration. And so we found the church in Gary. We were there one day and spent a lot of time there. And I had taken pictures and done some editing there, put it up on Facebook. And John Andrew had seen the pictures and he was like, where is that? We have to film there. So.
Well, so the funny thing is, we've known each other since we were both 9. But like halfway through high school, we were both getting into film. And we're in a pretty small posted the picture of that church from Gary, and I saw it, and I'm like, okay, that just looks so cool, but I can never film there because I can't let him know that I thought it was cool. So it was actually, like, through the grace of God, in March of this year, while I'm editing, or actually last year. So it was a little bit, probably closer to December of last year. I randomly texted him about just something, we weren't giving each other the silent treatment, we were just choosing not to talk to each other. So I randomly texted him about something, just about an old childhood memory that had come up. And, well, you can go from there.
Well, it turned out, so at that point in time, it had been bothering me because we had been getting increasingly competitive, and it was just driving this big wedge in our friendship. It was like, okay, this sucks. So I'm sitting in adoration at that point, praying, like, what do you want me to do? Should I keep doing my own thing, or like, where do you want me to go? And my phone goes off, and he's texting me, and I haven't talked to him in months. And so I'm like, well, that's weird, okay, yeah, you can't be telling me anything there. And then one of our other friends who was working with him at the time texted me 5 minutes later and I had never texted him. I don't even know how he got my phone number. And so I was like, all right. And so I texted him back 15 minutes after that. I was like, have you ever, would you mind discussing the possibility of working together? Which that idea about an hour before would have been, the other end of what I would want to do. So,
and I got that text, and I'm like, hell no. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to just say no because I'm not a jerk. Okay, where'd you come up with this idea? He's like, well, I was in adoration. I'm like, shoot, it's God's idea, not his. So anyway, that's how, we talked for a couple months, we went on a couple shoots together, and I'm like, okay, we need to do some B-roll for the third way, and I want to go and film at a bomb dad church to kind of represent, for those of us who are cradle Catholics, I think the church it's home. It's a place where you can be in another country, but you go into a Catholic church and you feel like you're home. And unfortunately, for a lot of people with same-sex attraction, that's not at all what it is. For them, it represents bigotry and hatred and isolation. And so that's what we wanted to show with the shots of that church. Here's a building that, it's actually a Methodist church up in Gary that was beautiful, and you go there and you're like, how did this ever fall into disrepair? Like, how did this ever happen? But that's how a lot of the people you saw in the film perceived the Catholic Church. To them, it was just another destroyed building. To them, it wasn't anything that was helpful. In fact, it was hurtful. So, any other questions?
How did you find people? Or did they find you, or?
So, Father Hollowell, when he had done the classes that he was teaching at Ritter High School in Indianapolis, did a lot of research. And so, he was able to articulate to me the church's teaching. And so he was offered guidance on the film and made sure that, everything was correct. There were a couple of lines in the original draft that weren't completely in line with church teaching that we had to cut out. So he already knew some of the bigger names. He already knew, okay, this person's going to be good, this person is blocked. From there, lots of Google searches. Catholic Church, homosexuality, what comes up? Who are the people blogging about this? And we reached out to 20 to 25 different people, whether they be people with same-sex attraction or blogging about it, whether they be church authorities. We reached out to several different bishops and cardinals and said, would you guys be willing to participate in this film? Surprisingly, to me at least, you would think on a topic this controversial and this debated that everybody would want to speak up and say, hey, listen guys, you're getting this wrong. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Of all the church leaders, that one priest who's in the film was one of two who agreed to speak, and the second one was a friend of Father Hollowell's who reluctantly agreed. He was like, if you cut me out, I would be happy. So the 7 people with same-sex attraction in the film were the 7 who agreed to be in the film. So mainly through Google searches. And then as we were in production, it was very clear that God was leading with kind of the way production went. Because I was at a meeting with a client on a corporate project. It wasn't even a Catholic project. It just so happens that the owner of the company is Catholic. We were discussing the film. And he says, you know what? A big part of the church's teaching on this has to do with chastity. So why don't you go to Christopher West and some of the big chastity speakers out there, which had not even occurred to us. But then when he said that, I'm like, that makes a lot of of sense. So we gave Jason Everett, Chris Stefanik, and Christopher West all a call, and they all very cautiously, like they wanted to know who we were and everything, but they agreed to be part of the film. So that rounded out pretty much everybody. The lady who shows up first, Julie, she was actually, just to give you an idea of where some of these came from, she's from Toledo. She is friends with a parishioner at Holy Rosary who has this tiny itty-bitty little podcast that a couple thousand people listen to it, but it's not well known at all, that my mom happens to listen to. And she had Julie on the podcast. My mom heard the story, was in tears, said, "Johnny and Drew, you just so happen to be doing a film about this issue, you need to call her." So it was really providential how it all came together.
So you just like, I recognize that Chris Stefanik, just never, Christopher West, Helena Burns, and just hit the contact us button on the website. Like it's all.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, with most of these people, like you think of them, especially for me, Jason Everett, because I heard talks from him when I was younger. You think, oh, he's a big deal. We're never going to get to talk to him. Well, it's like his email address doesn't go to some secretary, it goes to his iPhone. So we were able to find his email address. I don't even remember how. I think Father Hollowell had it because Jason had come to his parish. Jason actually was the one who made sure we were able to get in contact with Chris Stefanik. Interestingly enough, Jason, Chris, and Christopher West, all of them actually, like, they screened the film before it came out. Like, before he even saw a copy, they all saw copies just to make sure that they were okay with how they were portrayed and everything. So, it was incredible, though, just to drive out to Colorado and to get to meet Jason Everett short, which was quite a surprise. But he was just a normal guy, you know. And I think the funniest thing for me was when you're setting up an interview, you balance the levels on the camera to make sure that the audio doesn't get too loud. And routinely with the Catholic speakers, we'd be talking, having a normal conversation, just kind of like this, you know, I get recorded then. Well, welcome to me talking about this, and we get completely too loud. So they're very different on, you know, when they're in person than they are, you know, once the camera's turned on.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. Do you feel like you learned anything from interviewing these people? Do you have a better understanding of where they're coming from, or even just what same-sex attraction is about?
I think for myself, even though I came on, well, not toward the beginning, but you know, I grew up and I was homeschooled, very conservative family, and then I went off to a very liberal college where it's kind of thrust in your face, and you kind of sit there and get defensive and go, well, you know, obviously homosexuality is wrong, it's a sin, so we have to fight back because the media and society is being so militant about it right now. And that's really a lot of where you have those 2 camps, like they said in the video, in the film, and it was really difficult to see where the middle ground was. And so even though I came on a little bit later on, just being able to kind of meet some people who experienced that and who were willing to actually discuss it rather than say, well, obviously, you know, the church is just a terrible institution. It really helped me to be able to say, okay, let's kind of look at this on more of on a deeper level and try to figure out where that middle ground is. So I know I grew quite a bit, and
for me, it was night and day, the change. I also a conservative family. I remember at the first interview, Father Hollowell asked the questions. I was just behind the camera. They didn't know I was going to be editing, so I'm there listening, just trying to think, where's this all going to fit together? The first interview was Melinda, and as she was talking, there were at least 2 or 3 times where I'm like, that's not what the church teaches, is it? You know, homosexuality is not concupiscence. It's worse than concupiscence. It's really bad. And I ended up asking Father afterwards. I didn't want to be, like, show that I was ignorant, so I just kind of said, like, so, was her interview kind of accurate? He's like, yeah, she was right on. Like, wait, she was right on? For me, I went from kind of thinking, like, homosexuals are especially deviant human beings. They're not evil, because I don't think that anybody is truly evil while they're here on earth, but they're especially deviant and they need saving more than everybody else. And it was halfway through production that I forget where I read it, or someone told me that St. Thomas Aquinas said, that the greatest sin is actually pride. And that happens to be one of my primary faults, and I'm like, oh shoot. So meeting these people, I would have to say that the one I enjoyed speaking to the most was Joe. He was the guy who was standing with the kind of purplish shirt. He was kind of fidgety. My mom calls him Mr. Fidgets. He was homeschooled. Completely normal guy. There was nothing about him that would make me think he was any different than me. His cross is just different. And it was really eye-opening to ask him, it was just the two of us. The other camera guy who I was supposed to be shooting with wasn't able to make the shoot at the last second. Father Hollowell couldn't be there, so I had to set up everything and ask the questions. But that meant we got to have a one-on-one conversation, and I got to be really candid with him, and I asked him questions like, okay, the list, you don't have one. And he's like, I sometimes do it for fun. And I'm like, that's hilarious. And I asked him, like, okay, do you find it offensive when people joke about, oh, that's gay? And he's like, I think some people are overly sensitive about that type of thing. I've said it before too, but at the same time, it's kind of a subversive message. So it was really eye-opening for me to have the opportunity in these one-on-one interactions to get to know these people. And the biggest thing I learned was that they were people. When you think, at least for me, when I would think homosexual, I thought gay pride parades. And I'm like, that those people just have something really wrong about them. But to meet these people, I realized, no, this is a struggle. For these people, they have attractions that they cannot act upon without sinning. They are choosing to try to live the way Christ has called them to live. And that's sometimes difficult. And our response should not be one of judgment. It shouldn't be one of let's hit them over the head with the Bible and tell them everything wrong about what they're doing. Our response should be one of love. One of the lines that got cut out of the film, because we told people we were going to do 20 minutes. That was 38, and we could have done about an hour. There just wasn't enough money to do an hour. One of the lines that got cut out, David talks about finding that middle ground of love and truth. You can't condone an action. You can't tell a person, I love you and whatever you do is okay with me, and I think that you're going to be equally happy either way. No, we can't do that, but we can love the person, and we can treat them, and this is another quote that got cut out, the same way we would treat someone who struggles with a more socially acceptable sin. I'm sure all of you know someone who's maybe living with their significant other and they shouldn't be. Do you walk around and say, well, you're just a sinner, so I'm not going to talk to you, or oh my gosh, that is so gross? No, you're just like, okay, yeah, don't really want to talk about that, that's a touchy subject, but I'm still going to be Christ to you and witness to you as that. So to answer your question, yes, I've learned so much. And that's what, through the editing process, I, as a filmmaker and an artist, tried to convey. I wanted to the best of my ability, tell their stories. I've heard lots of complaints of people who accuse us, and I'm like, well, that's me, I was the one at the beginning, accuse us of an agenda and of trying to skew the way you look at them and say, oh, this is the way homosexuals are, this is the way they are, and then they're brainwashed into the church. No. I met 7 human beings, and I heard the stories of 7 human beings, and I tried my best to tell those stories with the film.
And for me, I'll just add something short to that. Through college, I met a lot of great guys, and I met a lot of great girls too, but I met a lot of great guys that I came to respect, and I hung out with quite a bit at Bible studies and whatnot. And it was just before senior year, come to find out one of the guys I hung out with the most, he let it slip one night that he had same-sex attraction. We were just kind of hanging out, he had a couple beers, and we were sitting there, and I was like, so, yeah, I saw you talking to so-and-so, what, are you, I was just giving him a hard time, and he was like, no, I'm not interested in her, and if I was interested in someone, well, the church wouldn't allow it. And then he left to do something else, and I just sat there and I went, is he trying to tell me what I think he's trying to tell me? And we got to talking about it, and it was my first first experience with someone that I felt was a very close friend to me, someone that I respected, someone that I had seen on a daily basis that I would never have guessed he had same-sex attraction. And so between the film, between working on the film and between just being around him as much as I was through college, I was able to really see kind of the other side. And I think a lot of Catholics and those who try to, I don't know what you want with, who try to fight against the media and the way society is currently going, we just don't see that side very often. Question?
I don't know, I have all kinds of thoughts that I just out there, but like, it's hard because I have some like friends who are gay and Catholic, and it's just hard to be like, because we all crave intimacy and want to, to be in that way, and it's hard to say like, no, you can't have that. But I think we're in a unique position as the Catholic Church that we have celibate clergy, that we have sisters who are living, they're attracted to men and women, but they're choosing to live differently. So I feel like, we should really use that, like, there are people who understand what living celibacy means.
There was another line that Chris Stefanik said, that again got cut out because of time, but he said, we're not asking them to do anything that our priests and nuns don't do already. And sure, you can go and try to tear that apart with the pedophile stuff, but for the most part, for the large most part, that's absolutely the case. And that's not, and the church isn't asking these people to do anything that it doesn't ask everyone who's not married to do. Whether you're, a 16-year-old or whether you're, living the single life for all of your life, you are asked to live chastity.
Only married.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, and I think that's again, another line that got cut out, that Joe said was that the issue is that society, in the one sense, makes way too big of a deal of sex. It's way too big of a deal. But in the other sense, the church thinks it's way more important than society does. And I think that ultimately, the thing that's always blown my mind whenever I read naked commentary on the film is that people will make comments like, oh, the church just says that they can't be with the one they love. And I'm like, let's define our terms here. You're allowed to be in proximity, you're allowed to speak with, you're allowed to have an intimate relationship with, you are just not allowed to have sex with. How is that not being with the person? I'm pretty sure that if I defined being with a person solely as having sex, you would call me a terrible, terrible person. And yet when you're trying to defend homosexuality, suddenly that definition changes a little bit.
Questions, comments?
How many times have you been in, and I can't really, I apologize, I don't know how many times you've done the show, etc. But how many times have you done it since this recent news surrounding the subject came out?
Honestly, this is the first time since then. The funny thing with that was, it's a great example of what I think led my family to, I don't want to say we were homophobic, but we didn't create an environment in my family of like homosexuals or people. Because of things like we saw with how the media reacted to the bishop's documents. The media came out and basically was their own church and said, oh, the church teaches this. Joe said it in the film, most of the things I heard about homosexuality were not from the Catholic Church. Even though this was reporting, it was not from the Catholic Church. And that's, again, one of the things we tried to do with the film was make very clear what the church does teach. It is what the church has always taught, and what the church will always teach. There will be no land shift change in the way the church looks at this type of thing. The beauty of being Catholic is that we know where we stand, and we will always know where we stand. We put out a Facebook post shortly after that and basically said, so you've seen the news that the media is reporting, why don't you share the third way and let people know what the church actually teaches?
So I'm just curious, Joe is the one in the like whitish shirt. Is he related to Cindy Fisher? You know?
I don't know. The funny thing with
Was he
Joe...
in did you see him in Massachusetts?
See Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Massachusetts. He's in, I can't pronounce the name of the town. It's not pronounced the way it's spelled.
Worcester?
Yes, Worcester.
I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay, yeah. No, the funny thing with him is I actually met, it's crazy the way connections have happened because of the film. The theologian at this organization called the Apostle for Family Consecration in Eastern Ohio, where my family every year goes for a family retreat vacation. The theologian there is like a revert. I guess he was Catholic at some point, and he happens to know Joe's parents. And he knew Joe when Joe was like a 9, 10, 11-year-old. And he sees the film because my dad works for this organization and sends it around. He's like, oh my gosh, that's Joe. Oh, wow, I had no idea. And so I thought that was interesting. What's also been a blessing, what we chose to do with the film, just to give you an idea, when we raised our goal was $70,000, we had 30 days. At that time, no one had ever heard of Black Student Films. Father Hollowell had a small following, 2,000 or 3,000 people he knew from the area. That was it. Extremely ambitious to try to raise that money. We ended up raising the $87,000, and our promise to everybody was that we would release it for free online. So currently, I think 180,000 hits do we have on the internet right now. The beauty of that is that people can watch it for free. They can be affected in the quiet of their home, and then they don't have to tell anybody, they don't have to, they can dwell on it themselves. The disadvantage is that I don't get to hear very much about the people who see it, But what I have heard, my brother goes to college down at Ave Maria University in Florida, and he's part of the household. One of the members of the household has substance traction, was living with the church teaching. Something snapped in the last 2 or 3 months, and he just decided, you know what, forget this. I don't care what the church has to say. I'm going to do my own thing. And it started to become a very big problem. I wasn't involved. This is recounting what my brother told me. He called me during the middle of the table, and he basically said, so my brother, as the head of the household, said, okay, we'll show it the third way. We'll show it for the whole household. Halfway through the film, he's sitting there like, this was a terrible idea. We have 11 straight guys watching a film about how homosexuality is bad with this one guy. This is not going to go over well. After the film, the guy comes up to me in tears and says, thank you. Thank you for showing that film. And he committed himself to living in the chest. So it's been great to know that that's, I've heard that and one other story. I've heard there have been 2, but to know that, a year from now, when we moved on to whatever project we move on to a year from now, there will still be people who can see this film, and still be people who will be changed by the film.
Because I think we just don't hear about people who are actually doing it.
Who thinks, I in my day have seen plenty of little short films that really moved me. And it never occurs to me to say, you know what, I should tell the director that he did a good job. It never crosses my mind. It's always like, oh, let me go show my friends this film that I saw, So, and that's fine. As I said, pride's my problem, so the more I don't hear it, the better. So any other questions or comments?
If anyone would like to watch it on their free time, since we all have 40 minutes where we, get on Facebook and do absolutely nothing productive. If you do a search for The Third Way online, I think it's still the top hit on Google. So second there for a while, got up to the first. So it's available there. We also have DVDs that are available to order online. We have them here. And,
yeah, if you want to get a copy. What I would leave you with is this. So Father Hollowell's role with this production was executive producer. That meant that he kind of put together the questions, the general narrative. He acted as the spiritual advisor. For the most part, the draft that I sent him first, he made very little changes to. There was one that we had not a falling out, but we had some arguments over. And it was the line that ended up in there because the priest is always right. that Julie says about how she was part of a gay church and there were Catholic deacons and nuns telling her that she could live a gay lifestyle and that that was fine. And I'm like, you just want that in there because you're conservative and you want to just like tell everybody that they're wrong by not talking about this. And he's like, no, this needs to be in the film. You don't understand it needs to. I'm really glad we put it in. And the reason why, and this is when he ended up sharing with me, is that the reason the media can get away with reporting on what the bishops have to say, the reason that everyone thinks that the church hates homosexuals is because the people who know the truth, starting with bishops, priests, deacons, and nuns, and continuing to us, the laity, is we collectively don't share the church's teaching. We don't correct the wrongs. We don't go out there and say this is what the church teaches. Some of you may have come here tonight and you already know, like the back of your hand, what the church teaches, and you're like, yep, they hit all the points. Some of you may have come having no idea what the church teaches. Whatever the case may be, hopefully this film has given you a very clear foundation for what the church teaches. And now it's your responsibility to share that with the people around you. Because people like Julie are in your life right now. People like Julie are desperate. They just want the truth. And we're too afraid to say anything or we don't know what we're talking about. Now you know, and now it's your duty to speak that truth. So, thank you so much for your time, and
Well, thank you all for